Hello there, and welcome to Tailgates and Driveshafts. This is the podcast where we talk about how to shop for trucks, and then how to make that truck your own, and how to improve it for your uses. Today, we will be talking exactly about shopping for your next truck. I just went through this process myself, and I want to take you through the process of how I picked out the truck I wanted to shop for, and then how I did my shopping, which is basically half of what the show is all about. To start off with how I picked out the truck I wanted. If you've been listening since the first episode of the show, you'll know that I had a 2017 Toyota Tundra. I had modded it a fair bit. To back up, it was SR5 trim level, the 4.6 liter V8 double cab, which is the extended cab Tundra. And I had added a new radio, and I had added some pod lights in the back. I had added, through a shop, the Bilstein 5100s, a hidden light bar. Oh man, I'm trying to think of everything I added now. I added quite a bit of stuff. So, I was really making it my own truck. I did not want to sell it because I got bored with it. I still had plenty of things planned out for what I wanted to do to really fully finish making the truck my own. Because with the way that I am, it's not simply enough to really just hang a, the trees, the air freshener trees from the mirror and say, oh, well, look, that's my little personal touch. When it comes to making a personal touch on my truck, I'm wanting to make it so that whenever you see another truck of the same type right next to mine, you'll be able to tell that is a different vehicle. They're not two identical vehicles. Or if you're my friend and you know me, that if I'm in traffic with you, we're not heading to the same place together, we're not traveling together, it's just you happen to be in the same spot at the same time, you can pick my truck out because you see what I've done to it, you recognize all the stuff I've done to the truck. To me, that is what it means to really personalize a truck. And I realize that there are plenty of people that, they buy their truck, they add an air freshener, they add a sticker or whatever, and that's all they need. Great for them, happy for them, nothing wrong with that. It's just a difference in opinions, different in styles. Anyway, so obviously I was not getting tired with the Tundra. That is not why I sold it. The reason, and the only reason why I sold the Tundra, is simply that I was getting horrible gas mileage. With it being lifted, or leveled rather, on the Bilsteins, I had 33-inch Nitto ridge grapplers on it. I was getting, on average, 14.5 miles to the gallon. And when I'm driving full-time for work and everything else, I'm driving about 25,000 miles in a year, which is quite a lot of gas. And normally when I bought the truck, I had budgeted for the gas, and I bought the truck when it was like, $2 and $2.50 for a gallon of gas. And, I had already been driving in 2012, 2013, when we were seeing gas hit, $3, $3.50. And okay, I still have space for that price. And then we get to 2022, when we saw gas prices climb, to $2.50, $3, $3.50, $4, $4.50, $5. It's getting kind of sketchy, and I'm noticing that my wallet's getting a bigger and bigger and bigger hole burned through it. I just got to the point that I could not really afford to keep putting gas in the truck. And unfortunately at the time, even though I was working semi-remotely due to knee surgery recovery, once I got off the recovery, I'd be going back to the office full-time, unfortunately. And I love remote work. I hate commuting. I despise commuting, at least when you live in a big metropolitan area like Dallas-Fort Worth. But I realized, man, Once I'm done with this, I'm going to drive at least 60 miles a day. That's going to be 300 miles a week at least, not including things like going to church, going to the grocery store, going to a restaurant, going to get supplies for whatever else, or going to the movies, going to do whatever. And I just had to make a change in what I drove to really just satisfy that burning hole. So I said, okay, I need a truck. I'm the type that I'm a big guy. I don't like cars. I hate sedans, not because I think they're horrible vehicles. It's just me being the size that I am and having a bad knee. I do not like sedans personally. And then looking at getting an SUV, kind of the same thing. Getting like a crossover, still a little too small. When I had my knee surgery, I was driving my wife's RAV4 for a little bit. It's a 2018 RAV4. And at first it was easier to get into than my truck just because it sits lower to the ground and I just could get into it better. Well, once I was able to figure out how to boost myself up into the truck using just one leg, I started driving my truck everywhere again because I love my truck. And at that point, it became easier for me to get in and out of a truck that's lifted than that much smaller of a vehicle. So again, I knew I had to get a truck, and then it's the time of, okay, what truck do I get? Well, obviously, I'm not going to get another Toyota Tundra because it's the same problem. I'm going to have the same issues with gas mileage. I'm going to have the same hole burning in my pocket, so I had to find something else. Looking at Dodge, sure, they have the EcoDiesel, but I hate doing modern diesels because of the emission stuff with DPFs, with the DEF fluid. I did not want to mess with that. I don't really care for Dodge personally. Again, I know the people who are going to be thinking I'm a horrible person for saying that, but just not what I want in a vehicle. Not a Dodge fan. Not saying they're bad, just not my personal opinion. Then there's the GM trucks, the Chevy Silverado, GMC Sierra. And I should also go back and say I'm looking specifically for a half ton. I could stand to go down to mid-size, but I'm a bigger guy. I want a full-size truck. So looking at GMC Sierra, Chevy Silverado, basically same truck, just a little bit different aesthetics and different features, luxuries. I had a 2004 Chevy Silverado. I loved that truck. I got rid of that truck because basically I just wanted a newer vehicle. I wanted to have the vehicle that had the Bluetooth, that wasn't multicolored because I had wrecked it, all that kind of thing. It's a great truck other than the fact that I wrecked it and that I was driving this 15-year-old vehicle or however old it was. It was just getting to be painful. And looking back, I wished I hadn't sold it at the time. I wish I had saved my money, kept driving it, because it really was a good truck. It was super reliable. The only issue that I had with it is it had an oil pan leak, and it had this really weird power drain. So there were times that park it overnight, next morning the battery was dead. But then it wouldn't do that for weeks or months. And next I know, one night it's just dead randomly. But after 2007, when GM introduced the active fuel management, or AFM, and the DOD, which is the cylinder deactivation, I believe, the reliability of those trucks just went so far down. I didn't want to have to deal with those issues. And don't get me wrong, I still think they're decent vehicles, and I think that the interiors are nice, and they ride nice, but the reliability still wasn't where I wanted it. Even then, they're all V8s. And I just didn't want to get another V8, even though EPA says, I was supposed to get, I think, 23 highway. I'm just, I don't think so. I checked Fuelly, FUELLY.com, where users can input their fuel efficiency or basically have a fuel log. And I was looking at those and I wasn't seeing a good, consistent, higher MPG, higher for a truck, higher MPG like that until 2018, 2019. That truck was way out of my price range. looking at Ford, which, okay, they've got the Cody, same thing. The V8 says it can get like 23 highway, but still it's a V8. Then looking at the EcoBoost, because hey, eco, they're supposed to be better on fuel efficiency. The 3.5s, they're basically just the same as the V8 when it comes to the fuel efficiency. Plus, they also have added issues of reliability with the cam phasers. With on the Gen 1 EcoBoost 3.5, you have issues with the turbos failing because you get carbon buildup on the valves, and you have that carbon buildup because it's direct injected. You don't have that port injection to help wash off that carbon. And there's a couple other issues there as well, which leaves the 2.7. And I remember when the 2.7 EcoBoost first came out, I was flabbergasted. I thought it was going to be a laughingstock. I thought this was silly that they're putting a 2.7 liter V6 engine in a truck. That is ridiculous. And then as time went on, and I talked to friends who actually drove them every day, I talked to friends who were mechanics, and they're like, this is actually a decent engine. Now, granted, you still have issues with the turbos from time to time, especially if you're the type that races off the line from every stoplight and every stop sign. But as long as you take good vehicle or take good care of the vehicle, that 2.7 seems to be really reliable. And I was looking all through these Ford forums and F-150 pages on Facebook, just scrolling through page after page and post after post, trying to get a consistent idea regarding these engines. And the 2.7 seems to be really reliable. Now, when they do fail, it is a bit expensive. But that's if and when they fail, versus, oh yeah, they fail all the time. Like the 2.7, for however they engineered it, doesn't have the same cam phaser issues, carbon buildup issues as the 3.5. The block is made out of like a graphene alloy, which is the exact same metal used to make the Power Stroke blocks. So now you have this over-engineered engine with this insanely strong block that is powering a truck. And I realized that having to sacrifice reliability for the fuel efficiency was going to be something I had to give up. That's one of the biggest reasons why I bought a Tundra, is because it is so reliable. You see time after time of people saying, yeah, I put 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles on my truck, no problem. Sure, I might have to do brakes, battery, maybe a water pump, alternator, things that are common to go out, things that aren't a specific issue or something that is common to just this one engine. They're great trucks, and the body lasts, the interior lasts, because they're simpler. That's the thing when you have to consider about shopping for vehicles, is there's no such thing as the perfect brand. Every brand, every manufacturer has their pros and cons when it comes to their vehicles. If you want the most reliable, you get a Toyota or Honda. But then you have to sacrifice some of the cooler features they might have in domestic brands or, Mercedes, whatever. If you go for, a Ford, we do have the nicer features, then you give up some reliability. You go to a Chevy, you give up some reliability, some features, but you get a better value. You go to a Dodge, well, you get a Dodge. Yeah, that's it. No, with a Dodge, you get good towing capacity, especially if you get, a Cummins, or if you get a 3500 Ram with a Cummins engine and the Iceland transmission. You've got a tow pig. That thing is going to pull and pull and haul and haul. But what I decided is to go with a Ford F-150. I wanted to get one that would get me the better fuel efficiency, and then also give me the reliability of that 2.7 EcoBoost. So then I started looking around. I knew, all right, I wanted F-150 2.7. Well, the first year they offered the 2.7 was 2015 with the introduction of the 13th gen F-150. And I had to figure out my budget, my prices, etc., etc. And that helped narrow it down. And I said, all right, if I'm going to be getting another truck, I want to get what I want out of this truck. Because there's a couple things that I already wanted in my Tundra that I didn't have for the sake of creature comforts or to make mods I wanted easier. So the first thing I absolutely had to have, other than 2.7 crew cab, is getting, or rather, if the F-150s are called the Super Crew. If you ever see or hear someone say I've got an F-150 screw, that means it's a Super Crew cab truck. So I want to have F-150 2.7 screw, and I said, all right, I want dual zone AC because I'm a hot-natured guy. My wife is not hot-natured by any means. So when we're on road trips, usually one of us is sweating and the other's fine, or one of us is fine and the other is basically a human popsicle. So I want to get dual zone AC, that way when we're taking road trips, we can both be comfortable. I also wanted to try and get power fold mirrors because I like tow mirrors. Before anyone starts laughing and thinks that I'm trying to be like the Dodge guys who have their Longhorn mirrors up all the time with their ghost trailers, just hear me out. A few years ago, I worked as a field service technician for a forklift company, and I drove a Sprinter van that had tow mirrors. And let me tell you, when you have that bottom little mirror on those tow mirrors, you can see so much more. And I loved being able to see so much more. I could see my blind spot. I could see how close my tires were to the curb when I was trying to park. I could even see around some corners that regular mirrors couldn't. Oh man, tow mirrors are the best. I love tow mirrors, but they stick out so far. So I wanted the power fold. That way when I park, I can hit power fold, mirrors fold in, and I don't have to worry about them sticking out, getting damaged, hurting something, causing damage to something else, what have you. Well, looking at those as my basic requirements, I want to say, okay, what's the lowest trim level I can get? And for those who might be completely new to the auto world, when I say trim level, that means that every model of car or truck, whether it be a Toyota Tundra, Ford F-150, Chevy Silverado, or look at your cars, you have different trims, which means different packages of options. So you have, like with Toyota, you have the SR, which is your basic truck. You've got like no features in it. You go SR5, you get a couple of like the basic fundamental features. You go to Limited, you get some nicer features, so on and so forth. Well, the F-150, you go with XL, which is like, that is their work truck. When you see all these F-150s on work sites or work trucks, they're most like an XL. You get an XLT, this is like the most common trim level out there. If you go to Auto Trader and put in a search for your area, and you can see how many of the different trims are available for that price range or whatever. It's like XL 50, XLT 150, Lariat 50, and it's just this big curve. So anyway, the lowest trim level I wanted, or backing up, is XL, XLT, Lariat, King Ranch, Platinum, and Limited, I believe. I wanted to get a Lariat. That was the lowest trim level that would have the dual zone AC and power fold. If I could have gotten an XLT, but with a options package to have those, I would have gone XLT. But Lariat it is. So my search was now a 2015 or newer F-150 2.7 screw Lariat. And then looked at budget, looked at miles. Then I got with a credit union to say, all right, here is my credit score, here's what I wanted to buy. And they said, all right, you're pre-approved up to this amount and it must be under this many miles. So with having that in mind, I was able to start narrowing down my search. And as an aside, I really recommend going to a credit union versus going through a dealership financer? There's a couple reasons for this. First off, if you're going through a credit union, you know upfront how much you can afford and what you can do. You know what kind of bargaining power you have an idea of your payments, and that gives you a little bit more negotiating strength when you go to the salespeople and say, all right, we have done the test drive and we like it. This is what we're willing to spend on the vehicle. Why is this happening? There you go. Okay. Credit union, yes. So when you're going through all this stuff, you have an idea of, okay, here's what I can spend, here's what I can purchase. You have more negotiating power at the table because you can figure out exactly what you're willing to spend. If you just go through the dealership, you're at their mercy. And when they ask you what do you want or what do you want your payments to be, that means they can go, they can get away with this lower payment, but we're going to jack it up a little bit to get the most we can out of them. They're not on your side. Well, at least not the finance department. The salespeople are probably, but not the finance department. I'm going to have an episode here in a couple of weeks with a friend of mine who does work for a credit union, and he's a fellow gearhead, and he was going to have some great tips on what to do when it comes to financing a vehicle, what to look out for, what to consider, all the good stuff. Anyway, go through a credit union to get your vehicle. I found out all that stuff and said, okay, here is what I'm looking for. And I just started looking over Auto Trader, Cars Guru, Cars.com, and Autolist. Those are the 4 I was using. There was like a 90% overlap, but there's still a few outliers that some made it to one site, but not all the others. And I looked at probably 5 or 6 trucks before I finally landed on the one I wanted. The first one I looked at, it had some issues, some mechanical issues, and they were wanting a bit much for it. And I just didn't like the interior, the way it looked, the way it felt. Said no to that one. Next truck I looked at, the tailgate is supposed to be a soft open, so when you just hit the button to let the tailgate down, it should gently fall down. But this one, you push the button, it gently falls for 2 seconds and then just BAM! Open. That's not good. And then I was looking through the truck, I found a little work order from when they had recharged the AC. This was like a 2016, 2017 truck. I was like, man, they're already recharging the AC. That's a warning sign. Plus, they had that truck in their lot for like 3 months, and they would not budge from the price. I'm like, nah, okay, not going with that one. Next truck I looked at, it was a good price, it looked great, it rode great. The only issue with that one is it had been sold in Nebraska. And the reason why I say that's an issue is when you're in Nebraska and those other northern states, you have actual salt on the road. And that salt can then mess with the metal components on your truck, on your vehicle. If you see vehicles from up north, you just see that the undercarriage is just all rusted out. It is a great warning sign for those of us who live in the south that when we see a northern vehicle, typically you run away. That being said, there are some exceptions. There are some guys who'll use what's called fluid film or other similar products, which is used to help protect all those metal components through the winter from all the salt, and it usually does a pretty good job of maintaining its condition through all the winter and the salt and all that kind of tough environment. So I looked at this truck, and I mean, everything inside looked nice, everything outside looked nice, but when I looked under the truck, it wasn't rusted, but it still looked off. And looking closer, I found some like surface rust, which, okay, sure, you could probably knock that off with a die grinder or with a wire wheel. and then spray some like Rust-Oleum over it, but just didn't quite sit right. I came very close to buying it because it was just a nice truck in good condition. Everyone at that dealership was just super nice, super kind, but I just didn't quite pull the trigger. So the next truck I looked at, so this was truck 4, because there was only 4 trucks. Next truck I looked at, I really, really looked out on. This was a truck that was marked as an XLT, so it's a trim lower. And this is why it's important that when you're looking at these like Auto Trader listings and whatnot, that you look at the pictures. Look at the pictures to make sure that the outside is in good condition, the interior is in good condition. If you have a trained eye after doing all the research, and you can look at the interior to figure out what options it has to figure out the trim level, that's a great thing. And I looked at this truck and it said XLT, but in the pictures, the badge said Lariat. I'm like, okay. Well, sometimes people will what's called up badge, where they try to make their car look nicer than it is. Maybe this is an XLT, but they said, oh, well, I want it to be a Lariat, so I'll just put a Lariat badge on there. I looked at the interior pictures, and nope, it had the cooled seats, dual zone AC. That is definitely a Lariat. And so I did the contact form, hey, I want to come see this truck tomorrow, and submitted it, and I got a call and a text like 30 minutes later saying, hey, this is my name, I'm the salesperson who's going to help you out with this truck, and just confirming our appointment for tomorrow. Like, okay, great. A couple hours go by, and it's like, I don't know, 3, 4 p.m. now, and they say, hey, listen, this truck you're looking at, it's a Lariat, but we just realized it's marked as an XLT, and it's priced as an XLT. We will sell it to you and honor the XLT price, but you have to come look at it tonight. I'm like, oh, great. This place is like an hour away plus some, afternoon DFW traffic. I'm like, I really don't want to go because I was working from home that day. If I waited to the next day, I'd be working like halfway closer, therefore I could spend half the time on the road. But I'm like, okay, if I wait till tomorrow, I'm losing out on like several $1,000s. So I'm like, okay, I'll go see it tonight. And I did that, and it was a good truck in good condition. I looked at the Carfax. It was a truck that had spent its entire life in DFW. It had been maintained regularly. I could see all the entries where about every 5,000 to 7,000 miles that had been maintained and oil changed and tires rotated and this and that. As another tip is be sure to look at the Carfax, not only just to see how many owners it had, to see any accidents, but to see where it came from. So again, you can recognize or identify if it came from a northern state that might have rust issues, or to be able to see, all right, did they do the proper maintenance intervals on this thing, or I'm going to try and do an oil change and find out that this engine is completely sludged up. Anyway, I looked at the Carfax, great truck, great everything. Actually drove to the dealership, it looked great, drove great, everything's great. And it has a bed rug, which is like $500. It had a backflip MX4 cover, which is like $1,000 already installed. And I'm getting this Lariat at XLT price. And I was looking, trying to find a truck around like 100,000 miles. That was what the credit union had told me is, all right, for this, you have to have it at like 100,000 miles or lower. And to find a F-150 in my area that's a Lariat screw at that many miles, I was looking at like $33,000, $34,000, $35,000 before you include tax, title, license, and these days dealerships have their little packages that are like $1, $2, $3 grand. But they had this marked at like 27 because they thought it was an XLT. And this had 88,000 miles on it. It's like, okay, I'm going to be getting this truck that is exactly what I want. The only thing that I didn't get that I wish I had is the tailgate step, because I've got a bad knee, so I wanted that step. But my friend's like, hey, you can just go buy a different tailgate, have a color matched, and you've got a step. Boom. Like, okay, that makes sense. Didn't have the tailgate step, and I wanted a different color because it was like a dark metallic gray, like gunmetal gray. And my Tundra is what's called MGM. It's magnetic gray metallic. And the F-150 is like the exact same color. I'm like, man, I like this color, but I kind of wanted something different. Oh well. So that's like the only thing I missed out on was getting like the tailgate step and something else. But something getting the truck I wanted with almost everything I wanted on it, plus a $1,000 cover and a $500 bed rug, and I'm saving probably $6,000 because they had marked it wrong. Like, okay, it's worth everything. And another thing I'll say is it is a good idea that as you're going to different dealerships and testing out these different vehicles, if you have a trade-in, get them all to value the trade-in. And then have them give you a sheet saying, here is what we'll offer for your vehicle. Something that is concrete proof, especially if it has like their dealer name on it. Because what I was able to do is kind of play the dealers against each other, which it's already kind of commonish knowledge that you can have dealerships kind of compete against one another, that you go to dealership A and say, all right, here's this car, what can you do for me? And say, all right, it's $20,000. Then you go from that dealership to dealership B and say, hey, dealership A had this exact same car, they said $20,000, what can you do for me? And they say like, all right, we'll do 19. And you go back to A or go to dealership C and say, all right, well, I was told that dealership can do 19. What can you do for me? And just kind of keep doing that until you get to the price you want. And you can do the same thing with your trade-in, is as you are taking your vehicle for the trade-in, take it here, they say, all right, I'll give you 15 for the truck. And then you go to the next dealership and they say, all right, I'll give you 16 for the truck. You go to the next one, you say, all right, I'll give you 17. And you just kind of keep using them against each other. But then you're using them for yourself. So because I'd done that, I had gone to a couple dealers and they're like, okay, well, we'll give you $18,000 for your Tundra. I'm like, man, that's low. Market value is like 27, 30. And just up front, I realized that trading in, you won't get as much value, but it does save you on the taxes and some logistical headaches. You just have to decide for yourself, is it worth it to try and have an extra payment or to finagle a third vehicle? Or is it just better to, okay, I won't get as much value, but I save myself some headache? It's up to you. I decided I didn't want the headache, so I willingly lost out on some value. But again, so I went to the dealership, like $17,000, next one $18,000. Next one, they tried hard to get my business, and I applaud them for it. They were very transparent, saying, listen, here's the price you said, but man, this is what I'm in for. I can't go that low, otherwise I'm losing money. I'm like, okay, that's fair. Thank you for telling me. And they said, hey, here's what we can do on your trade-in, blah, blah, blah. And they were going to do like 22. Like, wow, that's a good bit higher. So I went to this dealership, the one I actually got it from. I was able to show them this sheet of paper that had the dealership name on there, so they could see it was a real dealership, not just me like, oh, well, this is what so-and-so said, and they don't exist. But it had that sheet where it said the dealer name, $22,000 on the trade-in, and they went back and did all their math and said, all right, here's what we're willing to offer, and they did 21. It's like, you know what? I'm getting this Lariat for XLT price with all these features. 21, I'll take it. I mean, I just got a great deal out of the sale. However, I realize this is a general statement, not meant to be applied to every single one out there, but there's something about dealership finance departments that I just do not like. Really do not like. 99% of the dealership finance offices I have had to sit through when buying a vehicle, I've just always had this feeling of like pretentiousness and condescending from the finance person, and this aloofness as they're trying to sell you on Gap, which I mean, Gap is good, but trying to sell on Gap and extended warranties, which if you're going to get a Dodge, definitely get the extended warranties, and so on and so forth. And man, this guy I was dealing with was no different, because what I'd done is through my credit union, they said, all right, here is what you'll pay if you just use us, but here's what you'll pay if you use our little check they can take with you to actually give to the dealership. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. I get to knock off a little of money. Perfect, I'll take it with me. So I'm in the office and I say, all right, here's what they will pay me for the trade-in from the last dealership. Here's my check. Good to go. They come back and say, well, we don't like using these checks. I'm like, all right, fine, bye. Because my thing is, while this is a good deal, I don't want to make myself pay more money too, just because I'm, saving one place, but then making it up in a different place. That makes no sense. So I was getting ready to leave and just say, all right, fine. If you don't like the check, I will find either another way to make this work, or I'm just gonna walk away. And said, all right, well, hold on, we'll try to make it work. Blah 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 blah. And the guys, I said, hey, if you want to take this check, I'll go back to the credit union. I'll go and get a physical check instead of this little pre-made check, and do it that way. And it's like, well, okay, man. I mean, it's not my time that you're wasting. I'm like, dude, I realize what I'm doing. I'm realizing that's my time, and I'm trying to save myself some money because I don't want to go through your, marked up financing. I've got a coworker who's also trying to find a vehicle, and he was saying that he had done the same thing. He went through a credit union, got himself pre-approved, and just throwing numbers out here, say he was pre-approved from the credit union at like 3%, and then the dealership said, "Oh, we'll finance you at 4.5%." And he goes, "Well, they did me for 3%. Oh, well, we'll still do 4.5%, but we'll give you $500 credit towards the truck." And it's like, that doesn't equal anything close, to evening out what I'm losing on the 1.5% APR. And I just don't like dealership finance bars. I will say the one time, and I will actually name them because of the good experience I had. The one time I've had a good experience with a dealership is I was helping my mother-in-law buy a new vehicle, and it was Freeman Toyota in Hurst, Texas. And I helped her buy the vehicle, helped her choose it, pick it out, test drive it, etc., get through the sales process, finally the price, get to the finance office. And that guy wasn't that condescending type. He wasn't pretentious. He seemed genuinely to care, to be kind, and there's no haggling. It was just, oh, cool, you are pre-approved because you've got this status. Great, we can do this and do this and do this, and hey, sign here, sign here, sign here. And I'm just sitting there going, what is happening? We're in and out. We went from the time we spent doing the test drive to the time that we actually left with having everything signed was like an hour. Whereas most of the time at finance departments, I spend 2 hours there alone just waiting to do all the paperwork. It was, again, my hats off to Freeman Toyota of Hurst, Texas. Those are great people over there. So anyway, did all that stuff, and finally I was walking away, and the finance guy was like, all right, yeah, leave the truck here. I'm like, okay. And of course at this point, the salesperson had gone off, got the truck washed, got it gassed up, and like, hey, listen, I'm sorry, but they're not willing to take my check, so I think I have to drive my truck home, but I'll be back like tomorrow with a different check, one that I think they'll take. And like, okay, well, hold on, just wait 1 second. And the salesperson goes off to the sales director, and the sales director tells my salesperson, hey, let him take the truck home. I'm like, oh, thank goodness, yes. So I got to take it home, and it was just been a constant struggle for the next month. I mean, literally a month of back and forth on paperwork, and this place was like an hour away, and I didn't bring my wife with me because like, okay, this truck is for me. I don't want to have to drag her across DFW multiple times. And like, oh, well, we need her too because she's a cosigner. I'm like, oh, great. Because when we would just refinance her vehicle, and it was all like DocuSign, where they send you the email, you can just electronically sign everything. So I'm like, oh, they can do that too. Oh no, it has to be physical signatures, and they're first going to like FedEx the paperwork to me, and then I'd fax it back, and they had a driver come out and work on it, or bring us the papers and had us, sign in front of him. It was just a logistical nightmare dealing with it with that dealership. But I mean, the salesperson was great. Sales director was great. It's just that whole finance department fiasco was just horrendous. But that's how I got my 2016 F-150 with a 2.7 EcoBoost Lariat trim level. It's a screw, and it's the I'm forgetting what the is it 502? Yeah, it's a 502 mid. So with all the Ford trucks, they have 3 different packages within the trim level. So you've got like XLT, which has like 301A, 301 mid, 301 high, and it's the different features they offer within that trim level. And so mine's like the mid grade, so I've got a couple extra features. And I mean, it's this really nice truck, and I mean, I'm loving it now. It's a great truck. It rides great. That week we took it to Arkansas for a road trip, and typically in the Tundra, my wife would get car sick within about an hour and a half of driving. We drove 6 hours or about, and she didn't get sick once. We drive back another 6 hours, didn't get sick at all again. It's like, oh hey, we found a good truck here. We found something that rides real smooth. And it just handled really well. That 2.7 EcoBoost, man, that is a nice engine. I am eating crow right now, big time, of going from, wow, EcoBoost, what a joke, to wow, EcoBoost, this is a good engine. It's got all these nice features. I mean, I've really upgraded, stepped up from an SR5 Tundra to a Lariat F-150, even though this F-150 is a year older than my Tundra. And it's just a matter of, you're going to take your time. I mean, if you have the ability to, I know there's some, they get into a wreck, they've got to find a new vehicle ASAP. But if you have the time, really just have the patience to sit there and go through Auto Trader multiple times a day for days and days on end. Look at the pictures, look at the dealership reviews, look at the Carfaxes, look at everything you can, get with your credit union, have them, run the numbers too. If you're mechanically inclined, then you already know kind of what to look out for on a used vehicle to make sure it's going to be a decent buy as far as you can tell. And if you're not mechanically inclined, I highly, highly urge you to have a trusted local mechanic take a look at the vehicle before you buy it, or in the sales deal in writing, make it so that you get like 48 hours to take it to a mechanic and have them inspect it. That we can be sure you're getting a good deal and a good vehicle, not one that's going to end up being a lemon in 6 months. Also, just listen to your gut. That one truck that I was looking at buying, and I was ready to pull the trigger, but there's just something that said, just wait. I'm like, okay, I just get this gut feeling I'm going to wait. And sure enough, I found a better truck. And the thing about also waiting too is that truck I was close to pulling the trigger on was a 4x4. Well, because of the added weight of the transfer case and the fact that the 4x4 trucks are always lifted a little bit to give the clearance, it got 23 as the max MPG versus 26 of the two-wheel drive. Well, I'm a city slicker using this as a daily driver. I don't need 4x4. The only time I've ever needed 4x4 is when we had the snowpocalypse. And that was it. So it'd be a thing like, okay, it'd be nice, but don't really need it, and I would rather have the gas savings than using something that I might need once in a blue moon. So I went, went from looking at the 4x4 getting the lesser gas mileage to now it's a two-wheel drive and getting better gas mileage. And there's just not much else to that. When you are looking at a vehicle, I think kind of skipped over this earlier, is find out what you need the truck for. Are you going to be using it for a work truck? Are you going to be using it for a daily driver? Is it going to be for a mix or a blend? Is it going to be used for something that you take off the bed and put a flatbed on there? Do you need to look at the upfit availability and ease, the ease of finding stuff for modding, upfitting, all that good stuff. Like I said before, if you're going to be, doing a lot of hauling, you have a flatbed gooseneck, a cattle trailer, horse trailer, whatever. I mean, getting a Dodge 3500 with the Commons and the Aisin transmission, that's hard to beat. And, I'm now a Toyota and a Ford guy. And, I mean, some of the Power Strokes are good diesel engines, but they're still not going to touch what you can do with that Cummins Aisin combo. If you're wanting, good value in a truck, go get a GM. If you can, find a way to delete and disable the AFM, the DOD, and then you should have good engine on your hands. If possible, go back and swap it out with a 5.3 Vortec. Oh, such a good engine. But otherwise, it's, the only way you can go wrong on a vehicle is choosing the one that is not right for you. In this day and age, I mean, there are some that are better or worse in terms of reliability, but you have to decide for yourself. Am I able to spend a little extra on repairs and would rather have more luxury? Or do I want something that will never be in the shop and I'm willing to forego some creature amenities? I'm trying to look at my notes here real quick. Oh, and the other thing I mentioned about Car Gurus, the app, is you can see how long a car has been on the lot. There are two tricks to use. A, look at how long it's been on the lot. If it's been on the lot for more than 2 months, you can use that against them. To say, hey, it's been on the lot for a while. I don't see there's any issues. You're willing to drop the price. And some are, some aren't. Also, when you go to the end of the month, they're trying to meet their goals, exceed their goals, and they're going to be more willing to work with you to get you to the sell price you're happy with if you go at the end of the month. The best deal I've ever gotten, I think, is when we had a Toyota Corolla that we were leasing, and when we got it, we were able to keep it under the mileage cap, and then stuff changed, and we were just burning through the miles. I was all right, we need to go ahead, trade this in, and get something else, and just go from leasing to buying. We went on New Year's Eve or New Year's Eve. So it's not only the end of the month, but it's the end of the year. And we got it was a 2018 RAV4 with 1,000 miles on it just from being traded back and forth and whatever. Technically brand new, 1,000 miles. Even with rolling over the remainder of the lease of the Corolla into it, we were still under MSRP. And of course, you can tell that it was pre-2020 when you could get a vehicle for under MSRP. In 2020, the vehicle market is all sorts of messed up, and you have to do your research there too of seeing, okay, what is a fair price for what I'm wanting? Look at what everyone else is selling theirs for. If you see a vehicle that's, you consistently see 25, 26, 27 grand, someone's like, oh, I want 32. Hey, no, this is not good pricing. There's nothing special about it. It's the same years, same miles, same everything, and you want this much more. Why? And especially if you're going to be buying new, watch out for the market adjustment. I've seen some vehicles that, MSRP is 30 grand and they add in a 10 grand market adjustment, which I kind of get, but at the same time, there's a lot of people who are against doing that market adjustment, and I think it's the CEO of Ford actually went out to all the dealers and said, you will end this practice. And, kudos to him. And I think that's all that I've got for this episode. If you have any questions about shopping for a vehicle, or if you want any more details on what to do at certain stages, please feel free to give me a shout. If you have any other questions regarding shopping for the vehicles or the mods you want to do to it, if you have any topics you want to see as a future episode, please also hit me up, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to answer all of your questions there and take all the inspiration you can get. With that in mind, have a good day.